Hi, I'm Nick Freemeyer, and we're here interviewing today with Coach Al.
Hi.
So, Coach Al, how would you describe yourself in one word?
Can I do hardworking, I would say. I think, and basically because if you coach and teach, and that goes for any coaches and teachers, they're pretty much working 2 full-time jobs, so you have to be able to balance that with family and everything else. So that's what I'm going with.
Who's your inspiration or someone who makes you who you are today?
I think the number one thing would have to be both my parents, my dad and mom. Great relationship. My dad was a very hard worker. He was a teacher, still is a teacher to this day. Actually works 2 jobs on top of that. So I would say my dad also one of the most Christ-like people I know, and I can't give a bigger compliment to that. So.
How did you get here?
The funny thing is, but not a lot of people may know this, I actually started this job when Mr. Martin left the first time. And he was teaching physics and physical science and got a job. And I can't remember if he called me or Coach Leonard or somebody I knew called me about the job. I was working down by St. Louis at the time and decided I'd come up and interview and ended up moving up here. So honestly, I didn't know I'd be here this long, so it's been pretty good.
What about coaching?
I started coaching that same season that I got here. I kind of started mainly working with the O-line with Coach Sawinski, and I can't remember what year it is that I switched and kind of went running backs, wide receivers, and kind of the different positions. But that first year, maybe 2 years, I was with the O-line.
Was there any other schools you thought about being at before SHG?
Well, I was down in the Metro East area, and a good friend of mine still was the head coach at Granite City, and we'd been at Edwardsville together the year before that. And I really liked coaching with him, but I knew this is a great teaching job as well, and so that was a great aspect behind it. Not to mention the tradition of football and being able to coach. So this was a pretty good opportunity that I wanted to try when it came open. So.
What led you to teaching physics?
It wasn't the intent to start out teaching physics. My bachelor's degree was pre-med, and so I kind of had a third physics, a third biology, a third chemistry. So I was kind of endorsed in those different things. And my first year here, I started teaching physics, and I honestly think it's probably one of the most fun subjects to teach because I don't think you have to try as hard to show kids the application of it, real life application of it. So I think it naturally is pretty easy to teach because it's easy to associate with those kids why it would be important to them. So, and it's a lot of the demonstrations, the labs are really cool, and it makes it a lot easier to do it each day, even though it's the same thing over and over. So,
have you changed from your first day at SHG up until today?
Yeah, I've got 3 kids, and I didn't have any when I got here. I'm married. I wasn't married when I got here. So those are all pretty big. But I mean, obviously you change as a teacher and coach over time. You learn stuff, and just like any walk in life, I'm sure I'm quite a bit different. I'm older, I have more gray hair.
If you could teach another subject, what would that be?
I mean, I'd probably stay in the sciences. I think the engineering class that Mr. Crago teaches would be pretty cool. I'd maybe look at something with computers possibly, because that's always kind of been a side hobby of mine, even though it's not necessarily in the topic. So I'd say something maybe with computers too.
What's more rewarding to you, coaching or teaching?
It's really both, but for different reasons. With the coaching, you get to know people closer than you do with teaching, because our road trips in the summer, we might be in a car or a vehicle together for 8-9 hours at a time, and all the time spent with dinners and different things. So you really get to know the kids a lot closer in football, so you notice it more. But it's still cool to see kids coming back. Now I've taught kids that are doctors and out of college and coming back and saying, hey, that class helped me a lot, or I remembered most of everything when I took physics, and so that part's pretty cool too. So really, for different reasons, they both are, and you can't really compare the two really. So,
how many years have you coached football?
14, 15, something like that.
do Do you ever plan to be like the head coach?
I get asked that a lot. A lot of people are really itching at the point where they want to do it. And the one thing about Coach Leonard is he lets his coaches coach. And I've been on some staffs where the head coach micromanages and they want to make sure that you're doing exactly what they say, and it's really hard on that head coach. But the one thing Coach Leonard does really well is he lets us coach. Defensive, offensive side of the ball, he's not always making sure that you do it this exact way. And I think because of that, myself and all the coaches on staff aren't really looking necessarily to move up right away, because we feel like if we have the freedom that we have, we don't feel like we have to express, oh, I wish I could do this if I was the head coach type thing. So it doesn't bother me that much.
What's the best football game you've ever coached?
I don't know if it's not one of the state championships. Probably the one that is the biggest memory to me is probably the semifinal game at Providence in 2008. And I think mainly because we bumped to 6A that year. We had won 05 and 06 state championships in 5A. And it was kind of, even though we beat some teams, we'd gone through Bloomington and some of these other bigger 6A schools, we got to the semifinals. It was at Providence, and I think pretty much everybody in the state probably picked us to lose that game. And it was, it's a tough crowd. The way they funnel you kind of basically through their student section across the field, it's a tough place to be. And to win at Providence that year was probably, I would say, one of my most exciting victories. We won the championship the next week against Lamont, but I think all of us kind of felt that game was really the state championship game. And that probably to me is the biggest memory in my mind that sticks out. Like that was fun. That was a fun place to be.
What is your favorite and most effective play to run during the games?
Being a former line coach, I like the run aspect, and I would have to say, old school GT counter is probably my number one go-to. Now, I don't necessarily say line up with the fullback and just run GT give, but there's all the reads off of it. But I like the base play is just old school counter trade.
What are the most fun games to coach?
State championship games. And I think it's more so than just the fact that it's a state championship game. From a coach's perspective, all through the playoffs, you're always kind of worried about that next game. So you win a quarterfinal game, you're excited, and that's got to last about 20 minutes because you immediately got, what film do I have for the next opponent? I got to start entering data. I got to start entering data from our previous game to do self-scouts, and there's just constant pressure, and you have minute-to-minute schedules basically all week long. And not until that week, or is it kind of like, we've done all we can do, the kids just got to go out and have fun and play. And I think there's always pressure up until that point where there's always something to do and always something that you have to be thinking about or worried about. And once you get to that point, it's just like, let's just go, and when this is done, we get a break, So that's a pretty good feeling.
That's awesome. Last question, what's your favorite color?
Blue. Sorry if that's not exciting.
No, it's a great color. I'm Nick Freemar, this is Coach Al, and that's our interview.
Thanks.